Hello, and welcome to Digital Marketing Musings. Each episode, we choose a different expert to discuss the latest and greatest in digital marketing.
Today, we're sitting down with Chris Lawson, Dan Kuzio, and Libby Knowles to talk about supporting the financial services vertical via digital media. I'm Gaia Reed.
And I'm Andrea McCartney.
And this is Digital Marketing Musings.
Thanks for tuning in today. We're joined by Chris Lawson, Dan Kuzio, and Libby Knowles, who are going to give us insight into the financial service verticals.
And we're going to go around the table and ask everyone to introduce themselves. So, Chris, could you tee us off?
Yeah, thanks, Guy. Chris Lawson. I have been with Merkle for over 5 years now. Currently working with a large student loan lender in the student loan industry, and been on there about 2 years now.
Great. And Dan, pass it over to you.
Yeah, my name's Dan Kuzio. I've been at Merkle almost 7 years now. I've been fortunate to work on the same insurance client since joining Merkle, so have a lot to share today, but also worked with a number of financial service clients, so investing in banking.
Time passes very quickly here at Merkle. Libby, wrapping it up with you.
Hey everyone, I'm Libby Knowles. I have been at Merkle and working on my clients for a little over 2 years, and I'm on specifically financial services clients, so it's I really focus on digging into the industry. I work with Dan on the insurance client and then banking and asset and wealth management.
Well, welcome.
Yes, welcome. So I work with a lot of retail clients, and I'm always so curious about the financial services clients and how they differ between retail clients. Chris, can you give us some background on that?
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned I've been with my current client in financial services for just over 2 years now. But prior to that, all of my experiences was within retail, primarily, dealing with products and vendors that have large amount of products that they offer, thousands of SKUs, dealing with PLAs primarily. So it's definitely a different environment and strategy when it comes to dealing with financial services. There, you go from a catalog of thousands of products down to, in some cases, just one. For the most part, what I deal with right now is just student loans. So in a lot of ways, a lot of the messaging and keywords that we're using are focused around one product. So there's a lot more focus and emphasis, I would say, on some of those nitty gritty details. There's a lot more granular testing with messaging, and a lot of legal requirements that come around that too. Obviously, financial services, specifically lending, has a lot of restrictions with fair lending. So that's also something that differs quite a bit from retail, whereas with retail, I felt like we were just trying to skirt around Google policies, but then there's a little bit more legal ramifications now with making sure everything is in line.
So in terms of legal ramifications, is this literally ad copy that you have to go through, or is this on-page copy, everything? Like, what? Can you give me some more details on that?
Everything.
Okay.
That was quite a shock for me. I was used to updating ad copy just if there was a change in a percentage for a sale discount or anything, like we would just hop in and do it. But now there's pretty robust legal review process. So there's that. That's definitely one of the probably bigger things that we see on a continuous basis. But there's also larger strategy restrictions with targeting by different demographics, age,
Okay.
of a ton of those. But it's a different ball game with legal.
Okay. I feel like I must be in like the wild, wild west with retail of like anything goes, and then financial services seems much more like, okay, this is how we do things.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. I really had to pump the brakes when I changed verticals.
So the other thing that's also coming to mind is with retail, we have a lot of keywords that we're potentially going after at any given time. financial services, what does that look like?
So for my account, at least, and I'm assuming there's a lot of, it's consistent across a lot of financial service clients, you might have a large percentage of your traffic coming through like a handful of keywords. So there's obviously ways to get more granular with that, doing separated campaigns based on with different targeting of locations or different audiences. The goal really there is to help tailor some of the messaging. So if you can get a little more catered to the searcher while also meeting the legal requirements, that's one way to, like I said, get even more granular. Whereas with retail, if somebody's searching for that specific product, really it just comes down to like what's the price and maybe some of the value adds of like customer service and whatever. But we really have to take those small buckets of keywords and get as granular as we can.
And obviously we're talking about digital media on this show. So when I'm thinking about the difference between retail and financial services, and when you mention the difference in targeting restrictions, it definitely makes me think of, Google and Facebook and all these platforms have been working really hard to roll out these products that are a little bit more black box, way more automated. How do you manage with a program when maybe some of those platforms or products that they're offering aren't given the green light to be able to be used on financial services?
Yeah, that's a pretty hot topic, I feel like, within this vertical. Part of it is I think a lot of those new products like the SA360s out there that do incorporate a lot of those black box elements and restrictions on visibility. They were made more for a retail environment. Now they're evolving to be more enticing in the financial service realm, but again, at least from my experience, there's still going to be legal concerns because the client needs to be able to defend themselves legally, so they don't always just rely on Google for that sort of policing. So they want to know, like, okay, what are the demographics and indicators that Google's using to decide how to optimize this program, and obviously you're not going to get those answers. But I will say, just for everyone out there, one way I've kind of gotten around that is if you give a list of, or you can ask Google, what parameters don't you use? And sometimes that's sufficient for for legal teams, because that kind of checks all the boxes of the elements they're concerned with. But yeah, it's a lot of extra work.
That's a smart way around it. That's why people hire us. So on the same kind of thread of like retail compared to financial services, it's July as we're recording this. But I know a lot of retail accounts are already planning for Q4 and the Q4 holiday coming upon us. What does seasonality kind of look like with financial services clients? And maybe I can pass this to Dan.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely seasonality with the majority of financial clients. Typically, we see it being New Year's around, Q1 tax season. A lot of people are trying to get smarter with their finances. The New Year's resolution definitely comes into play there. But also tax season, there's sometimes disposable income available for people. So for the majority of the time, it is kind of Q1. It's definitely depending on the type of financial client, though. Typically we do see a longer buying journey, especially in the investing and banking. So with those clients, it just really depends on where they're at in their life. For the insurance side of the house, it depends on what type of insurance they're in the market for. So that's kind of why we always recommend that funnel approach, because sometimes they do need more education. So, the seasonality Q1, with the disposable income, there might not be a big of a lag, but in the like you mentioned, we're in July now, so we might need to do a little bit more education during this time. Definitely not sure if that's how it is, Chris, for SEM, but that's what we're seeing for display and social.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, it's all financial services, but even within like different industries of financial services, I think that does vary. Like you referenced, banking and those types of fields with the end of the year. But for what I'm dealing with now in student loans, this is our peak season, and it's really broadly stretched from really starts to ramp up in the spring, and then we really hit the peak days in August. So it's a little different when you're comparing it to retail. The preparation, I would say, is somewhat similar. Like you do all your planning during the slower times, and like everyone's geared up, ready to go, and you're enacting everything during the peak time. But it's definitely not as stressful of a sprint like I remember with retail. Granted, retail is getting more and more spread. It's like instead of Black Friday, it's like Cyber Week, and it's like Cyber Month now. But still, there was some big days where I recall some of my retail clients, like their Cyber Monday was as big as their whole month of March. So there's really a lot of pressure to make or break there, whereas now it's spread over a couple months.
So one thing, as we've been talking, that I've been wondering about is competition. Like, it seems very fierce within the financial service industry, especially if you're talking about only going after a certain set of keywords, certain set of product lines, those sorts of things. Libby, can you give me a little bit of insight about that and how you think about the competition?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting about the financial services kind of industry as a whole, in that it's different from retail, too, is that we look at competitive sets a little bit differently, almost in two separate groups. So we've got traditional business competitors, competing with products and services, kind of one-to-one there. But then we also have our search competitors that are maybe not even selling anything. So that really changes the way we have to think about optimizing our pages. So we can optimize product pages to compete with business competitors in a very traditional sense, but then we're seeing huge aggregators take over this space as well, and that's been a bigger and bigger trend over the last couple of years. So the nerd wallets and the policy geniuses of the world,
Question for you related to that. Are the nerd wallets, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the other example you gave, are they held to the same legal restrictions that your clients are, or is it more free-for-all for them?
So,
okay.
We don't have as much insight into their legal team process and compliance, but that is one of the things we really grapple with on a day-to-day basis is the keywords we can target versus what they can target. So, we can't title a page best insurance policy. Legal would not go for that at all, but they can. And, we don't want to just not rank there. So it's kind of a thrilling dance of where can we slide a keyword like best in, or like great value, or affordable. Where can we get those in so that we're level setting with consumers? We can't say most affordable, but making sure they know it still is within their price range and competing with those aggregators on things like that. So really does all tie in when you think about the competitors and what we can target versus what they can.
Definitely. Dan or Chris, similar experiences for your side of things, or different, or how do you grapple with the competition?
Yeah, I think, for display and social, it's really working with our internal team, leveraging the tools that they have, as Libby mentioned. We want to see what our competitors are doing, but one thing that we noticed has really worked well is to make sure you connect with your customers. You're going to get some not so great feedback, but also positive feedback. So, especially on social, you see a lot of comments, and you just want to make sure you're listening and addressing that feedback head on.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that was said there. These aggregators are across the spectrum, right? But I've noticed that within SEM, specifically in the past year, they've really made a large impact from what I've been dealing with, and that's really been driving up the cost of our keywords as a result because of that increased competition. So there's a lot of discussions around how to approach that because typically the queries that they are going after are a little bit more like upper mid funnel. So we always want to preach that full funnel strategy and getting the people in initially, but it's even more important now because a lot of those initial searches, and we already referenced like the journey between initial search and actually converting is really long. So if that initial touch that these aggregators are having, they could be directing them to whomever they're working with, and then you've kind of lost that opportunity that quickly. So there's kind of an emphasis on maybe we need to focus a little bit more on the upper mid funnel because we know that is where these people are being pulled out of the auction and away from us. So lifetime value, big buzzword we like to throw around, and really assessing like what's the value of those people on that initial touch, whether it's SEM, display, social, any channel.
Can you all provide any insight into the typical target markets or how you think about targeting for financial services and how they might differ from each other? And maybe throw this to Chris.
Yeah, so obviously we talked about the targeting is restrictive for a lot of demographics and financial services because of the legal ramifications. But there's a couple of things you can still do. There's a lot of products out there, Merkle offering a lot of them that can help identify and analyze your customer lists and help generate different capabilities with similar audiences for targeting in that way. But something that we've looked at is say I want to target people that are just getting out of high school, about to start their college journey, maybe looking for student loans. We can't target based on their age, but what are some elements and interests that people that age have? So like TikTok users and like going to those platforms. There's also different list affinity audiences in Google that you can leverage that can target those specific interests. And then you just have to stay close to the data to make sure that it's actually differentiating from the average to gauge the success of it. So the targeting aspect, it's still there. There's ways to do it. You just got to get a little creative and throw some spaghetti at the wall sometimes.
I definitely agree with throwing spaghetti at the walls. It feels like that to target for organic search too, and what we can optimize for our target audience. It's where it gets really into consumer behavior and kind of analyzing the life stage that they're in, because for financial services, for example, we looked into the mass affluent audience with banking. That's a huge consumer base right now, coming of age, making enough money to be considered in the mass affluent audience, and that's what's being targeted, but not a single person in the mass affluent audience would search mass affluent banking account. So, you're not optimizing for that. You're optimizing for the type of life stage they're in and when they might be looking for an account like that. So like preferred banking or like first family bank account, things that are more descriptive of what might be happening and what might matter to them versus being able to just kind of pick a keyword that you might be able to do in retail, dresses for tall people or things like that. Our users aren't searching for themselves that way. They don't define themselves in their searches. So that's an interesting thing we see with trying to target our consumers specifically is just a little bit of guess and check, but really trying to understand what they need and what they want.
Cool. So can you discuss the importance of brand reputation management? I feel like that's probably a huge conversation within the competition side of things. And Libby, I don't know if you have any thoughts that you want to share initially.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a big focus, especially when you're talking about money and people's finances. Dan touched on earlier, just interacting with your consumers and kind of building trust and reputation in that way. But it's a big thing for search as well. When you have an article out there in search results that is using keywords and targeting keywords with your brand that we wouldn't necessarily naturally target to, it's a lot of figuring out, how do we reach our consumers in the same way an article that is talking about us is, but getting them the right information and not kind of making a comeback, if you will, but being able to really tout your brand, but outrank big aggregators that can talk about you in a different way than you can talk about yourself. And so building consumer trust is kind of the first building block of that, but then being able to follow through with it and really be what comes across to consumers as a partner and an unbiased source for their information without kind of marring your reputation to just tout your own brand.
One thing that's coming to mind as you're speaking is the your money, your life principles and like algorithm updates and those sorts of standards that we're held to as SEOs. I imagine there's probably something comparable on the SEM side of things as well. But as you were talking about like building consumer trust and like having like good quality information, definitely came to mind.
Yeah, that's where it's hard to at times compete against those big aggregators too, because they have so much authority in the space. But when it comes down to it for consumers, the experts are the brands that are offering policies or offering bank accounts. So it can be tricky to kind of say that to your consumers, we're the experts, but at the same time you want information that isn't from a brand all the time. So definitely Google rankings in that sense with authority is a big player in what we do.
Yeah, and I think from looking at other channels as well, a lot of it's monitoring, especially when you get into like everything that can go on social media. People, I think creative's one thing that we really have to focus on. That's one reason there's so many eyes on it from a legal standpoint. I think they're also looking at like how could this be spun. People like to, they'll jump on anything to take a screenshot of an ad and like spin it into something, and then you're blowing up on social media. So there's a lot of that we think about. And then like I was saying, you need to also monitor and see, like have ears out there. Well, what are people saying? Like what is trending for us on Twitter or any of the other platforms, and being able to address that if necessary. And then there's some that's more proactive. There's some reactive things too that I've dealt with. Just once stuff does get spun or there's something in the media, there's a lot of things that you need to be cognizant of as well. Making sure that you're adding negatives to like your SEM account to make sure you're not showing up for people searching for like media coverage, or you don't want to be associated with whatever is being said. And then the same thing with social media as well. So there can be some fire drills. I've heard of many, well not many, but I've heard of some instances where they're getting phone calls late at night because something got published or started trending, and the team has to jump on and kind of make sure that we're as distant as possible from it. But
definitely a good reminder to set up your Google alerts for your clients, and then also follow them on social media and, like you say, like what's trending, just so that you're on top of it as much as possible, and other eyes and ears out supporting as well.
Yep, Google news alerts. You set those up too. So anytime they come up in the news, you can see what the deal is.
Your legal team will thank you for it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, being a millennial, over the last year and a half, a huge point of conversation in my friend group, at least, has been that interest has not had to be paid on student loans, or payments haven't had to be paid, given the COVID-19 pandemic and actions by our government. Are there other factors that have affected your client's strategy or just trends in the financial services vertical from the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic? And maybe, Dan, direct this over to you.
Yeah, I think, obviously nobody could predict the craziness of 2020. And as, Chris mentioned, the last thing you want to do is have someone take a screenshot of a creative you're running and come off insensitive. So, we saw a major uptick in our performance for one of my clients. And one thing we wanted to make sure of is that we're still able to be available for our customers, but also being sensitive to what people are going through. We were definitely, everyone has seen it in the news, we're all in this together, and that's really the approach our clients were taking when thinking about what creative to run or even what ad copy to use. So it's definitely affected this strategy moving forward. One other thing that has come out in 2020 is the iOS 14 update. That's definitely had a major impact on how we're able to run Facebook and other apps, other social media apps, whether it be Twitter, LinkedIn. They're all being impacted by it. So that's something that is definitely top of mind for our clients.
I think another thing too that most people don't think about with this, financial services space during the pandemic is just how we're measuring success for our clients too. In banking, it was really interesting to see those informational pages really come kind of be the highlight of a lot of their traffic with the Paycheck Protection Program and then the stimulus checks coming out. We're seeing huge increases, last summer for queries like, how do I deposit my stimulus check into a bank account? Things like that. So it was big wins for our clients when we have the content that we can reach the users with. And sometimes it's not even making sure someone opens a bank account. It's knowing that they searched for how to deposit their check without an ID or something like that. And we gave them the answer top of the search results page. Might not have gotten a click, but the impression there is what is the successful metric. And I think the pandemic also really highlighted that for financial services is being a partner not only with our client, but their customers too. I think it gave a lot of value to what we do, and just knowing that when people need to know how to handle their money, we've done our jobs really well to be answering that. And what a better way to build trust with potential consumers than to answer those questions for them in a time of need.
Yeah, and Gaia, you mentioned student loans specifically there at the beginning of the question. It was for that space in particular last year, it was pretty wild when those announcements came out. The SEM front specifically, we were getting just huge influxes of traffic on the search student loans. So we already struggle with trying to navigate intent with these very high volume keywords that we work with, but that just made it even more complex. So luckily we weren't getting a huge amount of clicks, but that was something else that was kind of unexpected and drove up costs to an extent. But also we saw it as an opportunity to again kind of get that exposure, and as long as the messaging and everything was adapted and a little more sensitive to the current environment, there's kind of a brand play there as well.
Super interesting. Now that we're coming out of the pandemic, what strategies are in place for clients? I mean, obviously not super nitty gritty, but at a high level, what sort of trends are you expecting to see?
Yeah, I think a lot of clients are starting to think out of the box tactics now. It's very different 2020 to 2021, just in terms of planning, and then, trying to align on roadmaps and align your KPIs now are very different than what they were 2019 and even 2020. So I think really just trying to figure out if your, kind of evergreen strategy is still going to work, and then what kind of out of box tactics. So, a lot of TikToks come up in a lot of conversations. I know, admittedly, I've been on TikTok, and you see a lot of financial advice. So they're really starting to explore that as an option.
It's okay, Dan. I think we've all been on TikTok.
Yep.
Hate to admit it, but I went to the dark side.
You can learn a lot in just a few seconds. It's good.
Or a few hours go by in a few seconds.
It's all for work, right?
That's right.
That's right. It's research. And that's it for this episode of Digital Marketing Musings. Huge thanks to our guests, Libby, Dan, and Chris, for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So stay in touch with us and let us know what you want to hear about next by emailing us at digitalmarketingmusings@merkleinc.com. Also, if you haven't already, definitely hit that subscribe button and please rate and review us. It helps others find our show. And last but not least, please be sure to tell a friend. Until next time, I'm Andrew McCartney.
And I'm Gaia Reed.
Bye.